So many hundreds of years ago, Pelosas lived in a meadow, and the food that they ate, the mealybugs, lived all over the ground and also underground. Let's take a few moments to see how many Pelosas at that time had thinner trunks and how many had wider trunks. At that time, there were 24 Pelosas. And how many Pelosas with thinner trunks was there? At that time, there were 8 Pelosas. So we've established that at this time there were 24 Pelosas with wider trunks and 8 Pelosas with thinner trunks. So at that time, when Pelosas lived in a meadow and the mealybugs were above and below the ground, could all the Pelosas get food? Yes, that's right. At that time, all of the Pelosas could get food because the food was both above the ground and below the ground. But one day the weather changed and the meadow went from being green and soft to being dry and hard. Because it was very sunny and very hot all the time, the mealybugs, the food that the Pelosas ate, went from moving about all over the ground to only moving underground and to living at the end of very thin underground tunnels where it was cool. And now everyone is going to take one Pelosa. So what you want to do now is you want to take the Pelosa that you picked out and you want to unfold the bottom like this. And you should have either 0 mealybugs in the box, 4 mealybugs, or 2 mealybugs. If you have a Pelosa that has 2 mealybugs, you want to go over here. If you have a Pelosa that has 4 mealybugs, you want to go over here. If you have a Pelosa that has 0 mealybugs, you want to go here. Okay, so what you want to do now is you want to turn and talk to your partner and discuss why you think your Pelosa was able to only get either 0 mealybugs, 2 mealybugs, or 4 mealybugs. Okay, so as we discussed, those of you who had Pelosas with wider trunks that got 0 food because they couldn't get the mealybugs that were at the end of the tunnels, those Pelosas were not healthy, so they died without having any children. So what you need to do now is you need to put those Pelosas that you have in the dead Pelosa box over here because they're dead. So please go and drop those off and then come back here. Okay, so as we discussed, some Pelosas with wider trunks were able to get some food when the mealybugs went to the top of the tunnels. And so those were not very healthy, but they were healthy enough to have one child. And as you said, the ones that, if they did have a child, the child that they would have is likely to have a wider trunk because children usually look like their parents. So what I want you to do now is I want you to go to the Pelosa with a wider trunk box, and each of you is going to pick one because your Pelosa had one child in it, likely had a Pelosa with a wider trunk because children are usually born like their parents. So please go ahead over there and get a Pelosa with a wider trunk. Okay, so as we discussed, Pelosas with thinner trunk were the healthiest of all the Pelosas because of all the food they could get. They could get their thin trunk all the way to the bottom, and so they could get a lot of food. So they were very healthy and were able to have 2 children. And these children, as you mentioned, would likely look like their parents, so they would have thinner trunks too. So what I want you to do, if you have a Pelosa that has a thinner trunk, is to go over here and pick up 2 Pelosas each to represent the 2 babies that your Pelosa had, and those 2 babies had thinner trunks. Okay, so let's do that. So as time passed, the Pelosas that were adults grew old and died, and their children grew up to be adults. So what I want you to do now, for those of you who had children, those children have little black dots like this at the top of their card. You want to keep those, but you want to put the adult Pelosas, the one that you still have, that don't have a dot on the card, you want to put those in the dead Pelosa pile, and then you want to come put the children, the one with these, around the environment right here. Okay, so let's do that. This is the second generation, right? So those are the children that are grown up, and so now the group looks different than it did in the past. So let's look again and count how many Pelosas with thinner trunks there are in the group, and how many Pelosas with wider trunk there are in the group. Okay, so as we discussed, so now in the second generation, there are 16 piloses, and there are 16 piloses. So let's see what happens in the next generation. Okay, so in between, when the students are moving to the different places, you want to make sure to put the third generation piloses, the one with a circle but that is not filled in the appropriate boxes. Okay, so now this third generation, we found that there were 8 piloses with wider trunks in the group and 32 piloses with thinner trunks. So what we found is that over time, there came to be more piloses with thinner trunks in the group than wider trunks in the group, even though at the beginning there were more piloses with wider trunks in the group than thinner trunks in the group. How do you think that happened?